Hi everyone, I'm Matt from Look Into Bitcoin. And today we're going to be looking at will countries ever buy Bitcoin? To do this, we'll be using a number of resources that are all freely available on lookintobitcoin.com, your number one source for Bitcoin information. If you haven't already, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to ensure you're receiving all of our content as soon as it's released. So right now we're just on the Look Into Bitcoin site, and specifically the addresses with Bitcoin holdings of at least 100 BTC. As we can see over the past couple of years, this hasn't moved too significantly. We've had a few hundred addresses swings here and there, especially most recently as we were towards the Bitcoin bottom price, where a fair few hundred wallets actually accumulated at least 100 more BTC before finally kind of distributing them as we reach this most recent peak here. So this is on a fairly constant changing to the upside or downside. Again, no real observable correlation with price. But if we're on the topic of countries potentially accumulating Bitcoin and other digital assets, then we should probably start looking at these larger holdings, try and keep track of potentially these big market influencing moves before they necessarily happen. And why are we on the topic of discussion of countries potentially buying BTC? Well, recently over the past few weeks and months, we've actually seen a record amount of gold buying from central banks pretty much all across the world. Now, this is due to a number of reasons that we're not going to go too in depth with, but we can see here for the first 2 months of 2023, in January and February, central banks collectively bought a net of 125 tons of gold, the highest amount for the year to date period since banks became net buyers in 2010. So, this is pretty significant news, probably in light of the current global political tensions, rising prices due to inflation, and potentially fiat devaluations pretty much across the globe. So it's a pretty substantial fact that a number of countries are now trying to diversify their central bank holdings and especially are trying to accumulate gold, traditionally something that's been reserved as a hedge asset, something that can be used to diversify and really is there to weather potential downfalls across global equity markets. So as we see lots of countries accumulating gold, as we said, this may be due to the devaluation of major fiat currencies. And one in particular is the de-dollarization we're seeing sort of glimmers of happening. We've discussed this in a video a few weeks ago, but as global trade tensions rise and as many countries look to potentially do trade internationally in other currencies, potentially such as the Chinese yuan or a Russian ruble, potentially, we're seeing the US dollar demand decrease and potentially an upcoming large scale devaluation in the US dollar. Now, if we go to the chart here, we can actually see the gold price over the past few years. And with this de-dollarization, we're likely to see the buying power of the US dollar decrease fairly substantially compared to other currencies. Now, if you actually load up here the US dollar or the DXY strength index and compare that to the price of gold, we're actually seeing an inverse correlation. Usually when gold is increasing, this is due to the dollar's strength decreasing and vice versa. Once we see the dollar strength increasing, this orange line here, we usually see the gold price decreasing too. So as we're getting some glimmers of the dollar potentially starting to lose significant buying power, this may drive the gold price up fairly substantially, but in a similar fashion to Bitcoin, gold is a scarce asset. There is only a limited amount that will ever exist unless we learn how to mine meteors, galaxies away. But with Bitcoin, there definitely is a finite amount. And as we can see, there's lots of countries that are already kind of dipping their toes into buying Bitcoin to hold on their central banks, such as El Salvador, who have publicly gone on record to say that they are accumulating Bitcoin on a national level. Now, this is pretty unprecedented, but maybe this is going to open the door to other countries to accumulate Bitcoin, one of the best performing assets globally over the past decade. We can actually see here on this site that there are a number of countries that do hold Bitcoin, but apart from El Salvador, these are usually inadvertent holdings where there's either been confiscation Bitcoin due to certain scams here and there, or maybe even it's just individual members of a country's parliament that have personally invested in digital assets. But what we can see is the popularity of crypto amongst countries usually occurs in countries where there is a little bit more uncertainty with their own currency and maybe there's a little bit more tension amongst international trade. We see here countries like Turkey who have had rampant inflation in their Turkish lira. Potentially the citizens there are a little bit more open to investing in these digital assets and using it for its intended purpose as a peer-to-peer currency. But these countries may be the first ones that actually again, adopt Bitcoin as a national holding reserve and start to accumulate more alongside potential gold buying. If we go back to this article here, countries like Turkey, we can see, are ones that have been investing as much as possible in accumulating as much gold as they can. So these countries here are the ones that we really need to keep an eye on, that maybe join El Salvador to accumulate Bitcoin at a more rampant rate. So just to summarize, in recent times we've seen a large number of global countries stockpiling additional gold into their national reserves, potentially driven by certain economic or political factors. And with many large publicly traded institutions also adding Bitcoin to their holdings, countries like El Salvador taking the first national step, governments will be exploring their options. As soon as El Salvador and large companies like MicroStrategy and Grayscale that have their own Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. As soon as those doors start opening, other countries will definitely be looking into the possibility of accumulating and investing in digital assets for their own national central banks. And a number of countries actually do already hold Bitcoin, even if indirectly. As a digital gold, expect more nations to begin their crypto accumulation soon, which hopefully will have a very positive reaction on price. If you like this video, then please visit lookintobitcoin.com, where you can also consider becoming a site subscriber to gain access to live charts, in-depth newsletters, indicator alerts, private TradingView scripts, and more of a fraction of the standard industry price. And let me know in the comments down below and on social media, do you believe countries will ever start to accumulate Bitcoin, or do you think they would maybe play it safe and stick to gold and more traditional investments? Let me know in the comments down below. I look forward to reading and replying to all of them. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.